Hey everybody, Matt Williamson here. Good evening. I am doing a quick video here because I just heard of the passing of Jeff Beck. And I typically don't drop everything and do a video when somebody passes. But Jeff Beck was just one of my favorites. And a couple things I wanted to say here. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people talking about Jeff Beck. One of the things I've done in the last 10 plus years, I stopped going to as many concerts of these older musicians that I've grown up loving. And part of the reason is because I had seen them, once, twice, three times. And as they got older, they, obviously the voices don't get better and, they slow down. Not quite as good as they once were. I thought, why pay today's prices for that? The exception was Jeff Beck. The last time I saw Beck was, I think, 5 years ago. And he was every bit as great as ever. And the thing about Beck is he really... From the albums I have of his in the 70s, when I started to see him in the late 90s performing, and maybe it was the early 2000s, actually. So it was rather late in his career, and he just kind of reinvented himself in a way that was so modern, and I was not a big modern guy. I mean, I'm into all kinds of old stuff, but he just blew me away. And there's a couple... I went looking for my Jeff Beck albums, and I'm still moving in and still unpacking, if you can believe it, in this place. I've been here 3 months, so I had to unwrap some of my B albums here and pulled out Blow by Blow. This album still blows me away. And if you haven't heard this album, this is 1974. It's kind of a jazz fusion, I guess you'd call it, but there's really nothing else like it. There's not a lot like it at the time, and it's very... I still think it's very accessible, so commercial sounding. And the song on here, a couple great songs. Probably the song he's most known for, one of them, is Because We've Ended as Lovers. It's a Stevie Wonder song that Wonder never actually performed. He gave it to Jeff Beck. But the song on here that continues to blow me away is She's a Woman. It's the cover of the Beatles song. Now, if you're going to do a cover of a Beatles song, She's a Woman, that's the one you're doing? Well, he did She's a Woman and completely creates a new song out of it. But what's even better is there's a live version on TV. He did some kind of workshop in the mid-70s, and he does She's a Woman, completely different, and it's even better. So I'm going to leave those links below for you to check those out because they're totally worth seeing. And for you Beatle fans out there, another fantastic cover that he does is A Day in the Life. He really does an amazing job. And that was that era when he did that album, which I think was 2008 or 9, I can't remember now, is when I got really back into him and as a live performer. Obviously, he was a pioneer in the 60s with the Yardbirds. The guitar work he did on Shapes of Things is legendary. Very early psychedelic guitar work, that is from March of 1966. There's really nobody else doing that on record anyway. So he was a great fit for the Yardbirds as they were experimenting and gave way to Jimmy Page. Him and Page were in the band briefly in late 66. And I have a two-part series on the Yardbirds that I did a year or so ago. So if you want to get the backstory on the Yardbirds, those videos would be a good place to start. Another album I was just listening to earlier is Wired. This is the album that followed Blow by Blow, another killer album. These were probably his two biggest albums. And I remember he kind of had a comeback album in the 80s. Was it Guitar Shop, I think? I didn't buy that one. I remember it sounded very 80s, but it's still Jeff Beck. So anyway, I sometimes have a little cocktail, typically when somebody that I really admire passes, and I've got friends that really like them too. This happened with David Bowie. My friend came over and we listened to Bowie records that night, and it's a great way to do it. Not going to do that much tonight because it's a work night, but smoke them if you got them. So may God rest your sweet soul, Jeff Beck.